Hi, this is Larry Hatch for cultivar.org, and I'm the in-house taxonomist at cultivar.org. Got graduate training from Cornell University and North Carolina State University in plant taxonomy, specifically taxonomy of ornamental plants. So this is kind of right up my alley, and there's a lot of confusion on the internet, especially social media, about the Tradescantias. So I'm going to do a three-part series on how to identify accurately the species of Tradescantia. And they're not really easy, so you're going to have to bear with me. Yes, we have to use taxonomic rules and keys, but I'm going to go through them all in detail and explain them so they make sense. Because the botanists that study these plants in the wild know them very well. They're not always good at communicating that information, but sometimes they are. And there's a guy named Dr. Pellegrini who's worked out the Tradescantias in primarily South America. And he's come up with a system that really works with our cultivated plants, with one exception, and we'll get into that. So today we're going to identify this one specific set of three species that are similar and often confused. That's the Tradescantia ceranthoides, also known as Blossfeldiana, Tradescantia fluminensis, which is the most common of the wandering inch plants, and the Tradescantia mandula, which is very seldom used for the cultivars that belong to it. So without further ado, let's really get into the meat of this. And again, this is scientifically accurate, and it does hold up with our garden plants pretty well. And I'll mention the exceptions on that. So what we're going to use is a dichotomous or two-part key that taxonomists use. And I'm basing mine on my own experience and some information that Dr. Pellegrini came up with. If you're interested in the literature on this, you can go to cultivar.org. It's all there with links to his really beautiful study on Tradescantias. So what we want to do is make a series of two decisions, like a fork in the road. And the first one is a set of questions. And you pick which of the plant you have in question. Does it belong to the first one or the second one? And then it leads you on a pathologic down the trail. So it's kind of long, but we're going to go through it, and it should make sense to you. So first you have to decide, is our plant upright, erect, and outwardly arching? Does it kind of go straight up or kind of at a 45-degree angle? If so, it probably belongs to group 1. If it's a very prostrate or pendulous cascading plant, probably belongs to group 2. But we need more than that. We have to go with the actual. To make a new species, you have to have more than that. You have to have details of the flowers and leaves and so on. And we'll go into that. Even if you don't have flowers on your plant, a lot of us don't, at least for several years, you're still okay. So the second part is when the leaf is held and you have a texture. The first group, the leaves are fairly succulent and thick. Second group, they're more membranous or cartilaginous, which means papery. So the first group has a thicker, more succulent leaf. Second group has a more papery leaf. Again, that can be a little confusing. The next part is called phytixis. That's just a fancy word for how the leaves unfold. So the first group of plants, the leaves unfold in a convoluted manner, meaning rolled or folded longitudinally. So when the leaves come out of your new growth, are they kind of folded like an accordion? Or in the second group, are they unfolding in a spiral? Do you see like a little spiral? The leaves are kind of in a little ring, a little spiral. Or again, are they folded? So that should right there help you a lot. And the first group, this is more important. The leaves are pubescent or hairy above and below. They should be fairly hairy. So, and in the second group, the leaves are mostly glabrous to strigose. Glabrous means without hairs. So the first group has hairs on the top and bottom. Second group is mostly hairy, with one exception. There's some little cilia often on the margins, but we'll get into that. So the first group, they're hairy above and below. The second group, they're mostly not hairy above and below, and you should be able to see that. So we'll get into that in a minute. And there's a thing called the pedicels. Those are the stalks that the flowers are on. In the first group, those are densely velveteen or velvety to hispid, kind of bristly, and they have glandular and eglandular hairs, hairs with glands, some without. So again, just like the leaves, the flower stalks and the sepals are going to be pretty velvety. On the second group, the flower stalks are going to be mostly hairless, glabrous, to strigos. So hopefully, we can kind of get somewhere with that. The plant that you have um, will hopefully belong in one of those two groups, you know, and you just by looking at the new growth, you can pretty much figure that out, and just whether it's got hairs on it or not. So if we determine our plant falls into that first group, that's going to be Tradescantia ceranthoides. And probably the most famous example of that is the cultivar, formerly a registered trademark. It's not a registered trademark, called Nanook, also called lilac. Lilac and Nanook are formerly similar, but they have a different history and so on. Nanook is patented, whereas lilac and lavender are not. Um, and be careful, there is a lavender that belongs to other species. But if you ever grown Nanook or lilac in ceranthoides, you can see that the leaves come out and they're very folded, almost like an accordion. They're not really spiraled in a full spiral. They might overlap a little bit, but it's not a full spiral. And the leaves are going to be generally hairy above and below, with some exceptions. Um, and there's one called pink fuzzy, which is even more hairy. So, um, so if we determined our plant is in the first group, we can call it Tradescantia ceranthoides and kind of move on. Once you got the species determined and you want to determine the cultivar, you can go to cultivar.org, click on the Commonalinaceae tab, and you'll get our study of 155 cultivars of tropical Tradescantias, and that'll get you somewhere. However, if you're going to sell your plants or market them, I encourage you not to sell unlabeled material or material you've guessed on. In the trade, we have to have ethics. In fact, it's actually legal that you have to sell a product, such as a plant, with knowledge of what its true identity and characteristics are. And so if you just guess what it is, you're going to cause damage for the future if you're wrong. So let's go to the second part of the case. So we determined our plant is not Tradescantia ceranthoides, either Nanook or pink fuzzy or some of the others. We go to a second fork in the road. So this is a fork from the second fork at the bottom. This is set of choices 2. And this will probably be most of the cultivars you see commonly of the inch plant or wandering dude. We don't use the other term anymore for sensitivity reasons and not to be offensive. So let's look at the two choices here. So we got two choices. The leaves and stems are strigose in the first example. That means short, little oppressed, kind of matted down hairs. The leaves are cartilaginous, meaning papery. The margins are slightly revolute or curled. And most importantly, they're reddish or purple below. Very important. The sepals and petals are generally velveteen. And that takes us to the plant known as Tradescantia mandula. Some of you may never have heard of Tradescantia mandula because a lot of the mandulas are actually sold as fluminensis. And we'll talk about more about that in a minute. So our second choice is, are the leaves mostly hairless? Mostly. Except the margins having cilia. And I'll show you that in a minute. So the first group are purple below. The second group are hairless have cilia on the margins. They're membranous to slightly succulent. The margins are flat, not rolled under, and they're green below. The sepals are pilose on the keels only, whereas mandula, they're velvety on the whole, almost all the flower, the major parts. Whereas in fluminensis, they're pilose, like a light little hair, just on the keel part. So the first group are purple below, the second group are green below with cilia. You can sort of shorten it. But we like to give more characteristics, to kind of, more characteristics you look at, the more confident you are. So hopefully you can determine your plant is one or the other. If you determine your plant is Tradescantia mandula, you most likely have the popular cultivar known as Lycadensis, which is here. It's commonly sold as rainbow or tricolor. Not everything sold as rainbow or tricolor is a Tradescantia mandula. And if you look at it here, Tradescantia mandula generally has like a kind of a shorter ovate or oval leaf, but it's going to always be purple below and usually with purple stems. And you can see that here. And whereas the Tradescantia fluminensis usually have a longer, more elliptic sort of leaf. And if you're familiar with them, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So here it is, Lycadensis, also called rainbow. It's a variegated form, but it's going to be purple below. If you have something that looks like this, it's not purple below in sunlight. If you grow them in the shade, they're going to lose all their colors anyway. So if you have something a little like this, like Lycadensis, that has the pink stripes, it's not purple below and it's got a longer leaf, that's probably Tradescantia fluminensis lavender or lilac. But again, go to cultivar.org and you can see images of all of these. If you determine your plant is a Tradescantia fluminensis, take a look at this. I blew up with a microscope the margins. And if you, anytime you have a Tradescantia fluminensis, you have a hand lens or a magnifying lens. Sometimes even a pair of bifocals will work. Yeah, I know. You can see the little ciliate hairs on the margins, and if you can't see it on the video, blow it up to full screen and it'll be apparent. So the Lycadensis or rainbow, which is a Tradescantia mandula, does not have these kind of big cilia, little ciliate hairs on the margins like fluminensis does. And there's a lot of cultivars of fluminensis. I'm just showing a couple here. Aurea, which is also known as Aurea variegata incorrectly, and the regular variegata. Again, there's also elbow vitata, quicksilver, that sort of thing. So again, if you really want to learn this, go back to the video again or go to cultivar.org because this key is in there too. I wouldn't be a good taxonomist if I didn't tell you the system's not perfect. Why is the system not perfect? Well, the system's not perfect because plants are highly variable and change. Not like a COVID virus change, but they change over time. And people are changing, and people make errors. So what about Tradescantia albiflora or the albiflora hybrids? Now, botanically, the name Tradescantia albiflora is a synonym of Tradescantia fluminensis. People are arguing this point on social media. Oh no, albiflora is different. Well, yes, your experience with albiflora is different. Why? Because people are putting the name albiflora on stuff that's not an albiflora or fluminensis. And a lot of them are hybrids. Guess what? People haven't worked out what the hybrids are and which ones are hybrids. We have a pretty good idea, but you sort of need DNA proof at this point. The key is going to break down where you have hybrids with other species that are not covered here, or hybrids between these species. We suspect there's crosses between Ceranthoides and fluminensis, or fluminensis and a species known as Tradescantia crasula. That's was not supposed to be in cultivation, but some of the hybrids look like it might have come from there. Because again, these things were brought from gardens in South America. The species were just brought in from the wild without a really good study of them. So there's a lot of confusion, even from 150 years ago. So we're still working on it, and there's a guy that's working on it, and we're going to get to the bottom of this. So temporarily, we're going to call these the Albiflora group. It's not Tradescantia albiflora. So basically, if the albiflora today is different than the botanical albiflora, we can't reappropriate that botanist name for something we have today. So albiflora as the species is a synonym of fluminensis, but what people are selling as albiflora, human error, are probably hybrids of what we're calling temporarily the albiflora group. And we're going to sort those out, which are hybrids, which are not, what's a good name for them. They'll probably get all new names. There's albiflora variegata. It's neither a variegata nor an albiflora, so that's going to get a new name. I think I bought one the other day called Pink Dragon. It's probably a hybrid. That's probably we'll just call it Pink Dragon and figure out the species name or hybrid species name later on. So again, the keys are not perfect because people are not perfect, history is not perfect, and things get mixed up. But again, please respect the botanical nomenclature and don't say albiflora is not fluminensis when it is. What you have called albiflora is not albiflora. And again, you can't take a botanist's name that he owns because he published it and apply it to your stuff. That the rules are that you got to have a new name, a correct name, and not go revising history. Botanists don't revise history that much, and when they do it by a set of rules. So we're temporarily calling them albiflora group, but these things are going to get new names at some point, and it'll be done the correct way and to minimize confusion. Really, do you want to buy something that you already have and spend a lot of money? I've spent thousands of dollars on plants I already had because somebody renamed them or misnamed them. That's not fair. That's not good. A lot of us don't have endless money, and if we buy something under a bad name, it hurts. It stings. And so this is why we're starting to straighten things out. It's all about consumerism, accuracy, saving money, and making it more enjoyable to grow these plants. Again, I want to refer you to cultivar.org, www.cultivar.org. I know in some browsers, if you don't do the www, it doesn't come up. And just click on the commonly shaped button, 155 cultivars, and pretty much all the information on this video. Thanks again for your time.